Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, let us see. Shant 32. Shanta ghora shiladhyascha bhedakopadhayo mataha. Shanta ghora shiladhyascha bhedakopadhayo mataha. Yogadvivekato vaisham upadhinamapakritihi. Yogadvivekato vaisham upadhinamapakritihi. So here, earlier we saw in 31 that when the knowledge is steadied in the heart, then we don't have the Sat of Brahman shining from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then the Chit of Brahman shining from 12 to 1, and then the Ananda of Brahman shining from 101 to 102, only 1 minute. Okay, so we don't have this. This kind of a fragment is not there, and this is very important to point out that the fragment is not there, because he had already talked about the Ananda and Sat and Chit of Brahman separately. And why had he talked about it separately? For Sukha Pratiti. Sukha Pratiti means easy assimilation and cognition. Because if you say Satchidananda and if you say everything is partless and then it's all one single entity, people don't understand. So Sat has to be unfolded for the sake of the teaching. Chit has to be unfolded. Ananda has to be unfolded. And then it has to be pointed out that everything is Satchidananda, but in the rock, because of the absence of what is called Sukshma Sharira, subtle body not being there, then this broadcasting of the Chit and Ananda are not possible, because the upadhis for those broadcasting, such broadcasting is not available. This was pointed out. So now in the he cannot let the text stand like that without summing it up properly. Otherwise, we'll go away thinking that, okay, right now I'm experiencing Sat of Brahman, tomorrow it's Ananda's turn, and then Chit, I don't know where it is. Otherwise, it will be just very, very confusing. So he has to bring it back together. And so he had said in verse number 31, they are not experienced as separate entities. What? Satchidananda. Because the reason that we even had to discuss them separately, other than for the sake of the teaching, the reason why we had to discuss them differently is because of the upadhi bhedat. Upadhi bheda means because of the different modes of expression, or the so-called adjuncts or containers in which Brahman manifests itself. So the limitations of the container, so-called container, are transferred on to Brahman, and one thinks, okay, Brahman is useless in a rock. This is this is the conclusion that one might go away with. And this would be the wrong conclusion, because regardless of the upadhi, the Brahman shines uniformly everywhere. And that is where we have to take our understanding. And so we have to get to the place of revealing the mithyatvam of the upadhi. The mithyatvam of the upadhi has to be unmasked, and that is the sole purpose of verse number 32. And in addition to not leaving us high and dry with three kind of split understanding of Brahman. So he is making everything, bringing everything together. So what does it say here? Shanta ghoraha. So Shanta vritti, ghora vritti, and then he doesn't want to mention the amangala mudha vritti, the inauspicious mudha vritti, so he just leaves it like that so that we come to that, we can add it ourselves. So then Shanta ghora vritti, and then Shiladi, Shiladyaha cha. Shiladyaha means the stone, wood, etc., person, etc. So you see what he is trying to do is something which is very beautiful and ingenious. He is saying that the vritti, the vritti here is Shanta and Ghora, Modha. These are the three vrittis. The coloration of the mind thanks to the guna shakti of Maya. These are also upadhis. These are subtle upadhis. Whereas stone, wood, and other things like that, where Brahman manifests itself, are also upadhis, and they are gross upadhis. So he is making this difference between the gross and the subtle upadhis. Because the subtle upadhis belonging to the mind, to the subtle body, etc., are not often reckoned because they are harder to objectify. So therefore, we go about the day identifying, most people go about the day identifying with their minds. Oh, I don't feel so good. I don't feel like getting up. I don't feel like doing this. I don't want this. I'm having a bad day. This is all the identification with the upadhi. And who is it that identifies with the upadhi? The individual. And what do you mean by the individual? Here we have to understand that it's the ahankara, the I notion. The I notion is firmly ensconced in the body-mind sense complex and identified with it. And its strongest identification is with the body and mind. Why? This is to a certain extent svabhavika. Because somebody has to take care of this body. So you have to feel the pain. If something you do, like touch a hot kettle, then you have to feel the pain. The neighbor will not feel the pain and come and ring your doorbell and say, please take the hand off the kettle, I am getting burnt. You have to do that. You have to take the responsibility because you are the managing trustee of this body. You are the one. You are the one that is there. So you have to guard this body from all kinds of apayas, emergencies, dangerous situations, etc. You have to look where you are walking, all these things. And then, then you are the one who is the witness of difficulties in the body, pain in the body, etc. So, this is what is sahaja, swabhavika. This is Ishvara Srishti. That for every body there is a sukshma sharira, every body has an ahankara, an I notion, and that I notion has some kind of a tadatmya, a kind of a association with the particular body mind sense complex, because you are the managing trustee of this body. So to a certain extent, the identification of the ahankara, the I notion with the upadhi, the body-mind complex, is swabhavika, is natural. This is part of Ishvara's setup. You can't do anything about it. Then the other thing is also there, is that why did this upadhi I have? Why do I have this upadhi? Why am I in a man's body? Why am I in a woman's body? Why am I mean, of course, the frog will not ask it, but if the frog had a human mind, it would say, why am I in a frog body? And when will I get a kiss and become a prince? Maybe it will ask that. So this is this is the this is this is also Ishvara Srishti. Why a certain Sukshma Sharira and a certain Sthula Sharira are paired together? Ishvara Srishti. In other words, the human being will never have a frog mind. Frog Sukshma Sharira will never be there in a human body. It's infallible creation. Otherwise, the person would be in a meeting, sees a fly flying around and takes out the tongue and swallows it right in front of all the people. That will never happen. Frog subtle body is for the frog gross body, and the human mind is for the human body. This is how the arrangement is made. But why this body for this jiva? This is also Ishvara Srishti. It is karmic. So there is an identification with a particular body, mind, sense complex based on karma. So that also is Ishvara Srishti. You cannot do anything about it. Now the last kind of identification talked about by the Shastra and by the Panchadasi itself is that, in one of the earlier chapters, is that it is the last one is called an identification based on delusion or wrong understanding. The identification based on wrong understanding is the problem. And what is this wrong understanding? Bhranti, born of Atma Ajnanam. This is the delusion. And how does it look like? Well, everybody knows how it looks like. We don't even have to illustrate, because that is what has brought everyone to Vedanta. I am as good as this body. Why is this happening to me? Oh no! What is wrong? Why am I like this? Nobody loves me. These are all the, what should I say, SOS cry in samsara. What is wrong? Why me? This is the sad autobiography that is being written in endless chapters, and each one is more miserable than another. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. And so this identification is Jiva Srishti. The identification with the body, mind, sense complex due to not knowing the truth of oneself is the responsibility of this ahankara. The ahankara, which is kind of already identified because of the scheme of Ishvara and the laws of Ishvara, takes on the last identification on its own, unaided by anyone else, and then has the dubious distinction of being completely identified with the upadhi, including the subtle upadhi of the mind, etc. So what is the job of Vedanta? Vedanta is like a mother. Shruti is like a mother. It's like a child that has strayed off into the street, and the mother holds its hand and brings it back to the footpath, to the curb. And similarly, the Shastra, with the help of the Guru, walks the ahankara, the I notion, from being completely trapped, so to speak, in the body, mind, sense complex to Brahman, to Brahmananda. That is the journey of Vedanta, where one, like the child, with complete trust, Shraddha, allows the Shastra to walk one for this walk, to walk over from the sad place, dangerous place of identifying with everything small, feeling a sense of scarcity, suffering from a sense of helplessness, hopelessness, despair, to seeing that actually one is so glorious, one is the only thing that there is. This is the walk. And that's why we say we need Shama, Dama, all these, qualifications. A resolved mind, a non-reactive body and mind, Shraddha, trust, pending understanding. And then what else? The Viveka, the discrimination to know something is terribly wrong with this identification. And this identification, this wrong identification is the cause of sorrow. And Vairagya, the ability to let go of the small and be big. As Swamiji used to say, be big like me. This is where everybody needs to, what is that? Grow into the Shastra, model the bigness of the Shastra. And so therefore, he is equating the upadhi of stone, etc., which are very easy to see. You can say, after studying this chapter especially, you can say, this is a stone. This is, and then you can say, this is actually Brahman in the form of the upadhi of the stone. You can see like that. In fact, that was one of the meditations where the Sat, that is Brahman, was seen everywhere. One can do that. And then, but it is much harder in the spate of anger, krodha, moha, delusion, and wrong identification, and raga, dvesha, etc. It is very hard to look at the mind in the same way as you might do a wayside rock, clay, stone, piece of wood, etc. But this is where we have to go. This is where we are being asked to go, is to objectify the subtle upadhi, which is the mind, and even subtler impressions of this subtle upadhi in the form of shanta, ghora, and mudha vrittayah. Very, very difficult to identify this as an upadhi. But that is all it is. An upadhi is what? It is a projection. It's just a projection. It's the projection of that which is free of all projections. Brahman is as though in the form of a upadhi. The upadhi bheda is mithya. The upadhi is a dependent reality on this Brahman, where this Brahman is expressing itself, so to speak. And so we learn to do upeksha. Upeksha means a cognitive disregarding of this upadhi is done. Why? So that we can understand Bhagavan as the truth of oneself. So how to do that is described in this and the next verse. So the first he says, Shiladyascha bhedakah upadhayah bhedakah mataha. Mataha means in the opinion of the Shastrajñas, in the opinion of all the Pandits and the scholars and saints of the Vedanta tradition, the differences in the vritti, whether one is experiencing object-derived happiness or object-based anger or object-based sorrow, they are simply the differences based on upadhi, because the vrittis themselves are the upadhi, and the vrittis sitting in the mind is also an upadhi. And this we have to cognitively shift the presence of the I from sitting in these miserable upadhis of the mind and their vrittis therein, and take it to a place of Satchidanandam Brahma by understanding the truth of oneself. How? The next line talks about it. Yogat. Yogat means through a committed lifestyle, karma yoga, etc. Karma yoga develops emotional maturity, definitely. Why? Because it is that is its power. It's a bahiranga sadhana, and So it develops emotional maturity because you are no longer having the time to wallow in the vrittis, especially ghora and mudha vrittis. And since there is Bhagavan involved and prayer involved, one is on a diet of prayer and prasada buddhi, and so the mind calms down. Mind itself becomes prasida. This is it becomes pleased, and then it is quietened down. Lastly, since everything is done in a spirit of prayer and service, then there is sacrifice. And the sacrifice means the raga and dvesha slim down. They are put on a diet. And so they are just, they slim down. And so they are not so heavy. They don't run you amok. So each time you serve, whether it is your family or community, each time, whether you serve or not, if the spirit of service and giving is there, and each time you give, actually the person who you give to, the recipient of your giving, of course flourishes and thrives, but the greatest benefit is for you. You grow. That is why seva is not translated as charity, because the word charity already has some built-in condescension and patronizing attitude. You are not doing charity, you are actually helping yourself. You have to thank the recipient for giving you an opportunity to grow. No matter how demanding they are, and no matter how difficult the service might be, and sometimes it is difficult, because the people that surround oneself are not sometimes very reciprocative, they are not grateful. But still one does this, and that sacrifice itself, when one does it knowingly, this is not an advice to become a doormat. That's not what we are talking about. One has healthy boundaries, and yet one grows through a spirit of service. And in this growth, there is the Shanta Vritti preponderates. And when Shanta Vritti predominates, then the knowledge goes in very, very nicely and easily and is assimilated. So this is yoga. The yoga helps helps indirectly for one to prepare for self-knowledge. So the yoga indirectly is responsible for self-knowledge. But then what is the primary sadhana for self-knowledge? Here it says vivekatah, self-enquiry. Study of Vedanta here is called viveka, because that viveka itself carries you to study this knowledge, properly, systematically, with the help of a teacher, etc. And then yogat va, vai here is not vai, va, yogad va vivekatah va. Either through yoga or through viveka, self-enquiry. So here it's, even though it says either or, these are all just preparatory things. The viveka is preparatory, yoga is preparatory. Esham upadhinam apakritihi. Apakritihi means the removal. The removal of these vrittis. Which vrittis? The disturbing vrittis, of course. Don't try and remove Shanta vritti. Okay, that will be a futile, that will be it'll be like barking up the wrong tree. No, but Shanta is also upadhi. Let it be. It will resolve on its own because it is closest, as we have seen, to Satchidananda. Let Shanta vritti be, because it is not disturbing. We are talking of disturbing vrittis, oppressing vrittis, dejecting vrittis. So the other two, apakritihi, means their removal is through Vedanta, and for Vedanta you need yoga and viveka. Viveka here is the study of self, and through self-enquiry. First you say, what is happening to me? Why am I like this? How come I am sad only during the waking state and not during the sleep state? Where do the vrittis, disturbing vrittis, go? These are the questions to ask oneself. And if they are gone during the night and on occasion when I am happy without reason, then that means that they are they are vyabhicharins. They are contradictory. They are not real, because that which is real you cannot remove. Or maybe they are unreal. Well, that which is unreal need not be removed. Why would you spend time removing something that doesn't exist? How can you spend time removing something that doesn't exist? But here, their non-existence is of a funny kind of a non-existence, if you call them non-existent. And if you call these vrittis existent, then it is a funny kind of an existence, because I know they are there because they cause problems, yet they seem to be not there ultimately. So they can neither be affirmed nor can they be denied. They are maya, mithya. And so how to remove this mithya? To remove this mithya, quote unquote, remove mithya cognitively by catching hold of Satyam and knowing Satchidananda so well, allowing yourself to be walked over from the attaching, identifying to this I, filled with and riddled with smallness, riddled with the roga of samsara, and you are taken to a place where you identify with the whole. Taittiriya Upanishad at the close of the first chapter says, Swarajyam, apnoti swarajyam, gains the kingdom of the self. This is what it is. Swarajyam is one becomes the master of the self. Forget these vrittis. One is in the glory of everything that is. Through yoga, which is karma yoga, etc., you can even take asanas, anything that helps. And then vivekataha, through a determined and a proper self-enquiry, vivekataha, one conquers these vrittis. One removes the effect of the disturbing vrittis on oneself, and naturally one becomes cheerful. This is what is talked about in verse number 33. Nirupadhika brahma tattve bhasamane swayam prabhe. Nirupadhi brahma tattve भासमाने स्वयं प्रभे अद्वैते त्रिपुटी नास्ति भूमानन्दोत उच्यते अद्वैते त्रिपुटी नास्ति भूमानन्दोत उच्यते निरुपाधि ब्रह्म तत्वे. When the truth, tattva means tattva is the abstract noun of tat. Tat means that. That means Ishvara, Brahman. Because it is not locally available, out of ignorance we say that. Because it is not understood as this body. So therefore that word, the pronoun that is used. So when you make that into an abstract noun, you get the word thatness. So tat and tattvam. And so here nirupadhi, this Brahma Tattva, the truth of Brahman as yourself, as Satchidananda, is nirupadhika, is free of attributes, free of conditioning of any name, any form. So this Brahman, free of attributes, this truth of yourself as Satchidananda, Satchidanandam Brahma as Ishvara, is free of attributes, is the essence of the truth of the self, and bhasamane swayam prabhe. This is like all of them are in seventh case. It's an absolute locative construction. That's what we call it. Means it's a conditional statement. When Brahman, undisturbed by all these upadhis, when Brahman is uncovered as undisturbed by all these upadhis, when it shines, bhasamane, when this self-luminous and self-evident and self-lit Brahman, self-standing Brahman, that is not dependent on anything at all, shines as you, then what happens? Then the triad, triputi of knower known knowledge collapses, is no longer there. We are just seeing the translation. And this is called bhuma. This happiness, this limitlessness is called bhuma. An experience without the presence of an experiencer. This is what the trick is. Because if there is an experiencer to say, oh, how wonderful this Brahman is, Brahman stops being wonderful, because there is a difference between the one who is waxing eloquent about the experience of Brahman, and then Brahman has suddenly become an object. Ananda goes out of the door and the window simultaneously. So this triputi, see, that's why objects cannot give happiness that one seeks, because one wants the whole and undivided, non-dual happiness which already is oneself. And that the only way to get it is fall asleep. Not now in the Vedanta class, okay? Yeah, afterwards you can fall asleep. But so that's the only way. Seemingly, for the uninitiated, for the ones who don't have Vedanta Shastra, what other option is there? Go to sleep. That's why sleep becomes very alluring, because in sleep these divisions are not there. And one wakes up refreshed. Unfortunately, one is not able to understand it, because the mind, which understands this, is also gone to sleep, is in a causal form. That's why sleep is enjoyed, but then later on that enjoyment is recollected. Sukham aham aswapsam. I slept so well. Na kinchit avedisham, that I did not know anything, says the one who just woke up. So that not knowing anything, meaning not having an object of your cognition, that is what is meant. There is a certain wholeness in that. That wholeness is not only available in sleep. Otherwise one would be satisfied going to sleep, and one would no longer have any questions about why I cannot have this in the waking state. So this is the story with this. And then so what now? Now we have to see something else which is connected to this, which is that this is Advaita of sleep, a natural state that all beings, all jivas, animals, human beings, everyone undergoes. So in this Advaita, why is it enjoyable? Why is sleep enjoyable? Triputi nasti, the triad of sleeper, the status of the sleeper, and the experience of sleep, and the mind perhaps, which is the upadhi for the knowing this experience. These three things are not there. These three things are not there. That's why object joy is never satisfactory, because in everything that you enjoy, there is the difference between the enjoyer and the enjoyed, the object of enjoyment and the means of enjoyment. Therefore, the Brihadaranyaka says, matram eva upajivanti. What do they upajivanti? They experience. All the jivas, lesha leshataha, means little by little, they sit at the table of Brahman like little doggies and experience little scraps of ananda. Why? Because upadhi, because of the upadhi. The mind is a small upadhi, And when it occupies or understands itself to be the knower, it is naturally separated from that which is known. Enjoyer, enjoyed, this duality is there. Add to this the means of enjoyment, so everything is experienced in little bites. Whereas the appetite for this ananda is a garangutan appetite. One has a big appetite for ananda, but one can only eat it in little bites so long as one is devoted to the joy of objects. This is the difference between the subject joy and object joy, because the object joy doesn't lead you anywhere. It leaves you craving for the truth of oneself as the subject. And so therefore what happens? So therefore what to do now? How to break down the barriers? Nothing is needed. Graduate from object joy. Give up object joys. How? Dosha drishtya muhur muhuhu. See their finitude again and again. And say, this is not going to help me. In fact, this is the joy derived through this is the joy of Brahman. The joy doesn't belong to the object, it belongs to me, the subject. And with the growing clarity, this Advaita is not experienced like all other experiences. If Advaita is also an experience, then it will again become finite. It will become, Brahman will become one more object, leading us to ask questions. I understand Brahman, but how to experience it? Even when you're complaining, you're experiencing Brahman. When you're sad, you're experiencing Brahman. It's the Ananda of Brahman that upholds your fears, your tears, the Ghora Vritti, the Mudha Vritti, everything. You're experiencing Brahman all the time. But why is the happiness denied to me? If you ask, it is not denied. It is just cut up into little pieces because the differences between the enjoyer, enjoyed, and the means of enjoyment are taken as real. That is what it is. Are taken as real. And therefore there is object dependency. And then there is an urgency. I have to be happy. There is a pressure. And so therefore there needs to be a revolution of the vision, like we heard in the Mirabai's bhajan earlier for this class. What people are trying to do is to get rid of samsara. How? By learning how to swim in it, how to not sink, how to avoid the riptides, how to avoid the currents. Where are the sharks there? Yesterday it came in the news that one fellow was diving somewhere, and then he suddenly felt everything is dark. What happened? A whale opened its mouth and he went inside the mouth of the whale, and then the whale closed its mouth. Think about the big, and then even it was so big, he said he was swimming in its mouth because it had also swallowed a lot of water. Thankfully it didn't swallow him, and it must have thought, this is terrible, what is this? It's just like what happens to us if we are opened the mouth and one mosquito goes inside or something, we spit it out. So then it came to the surface and spat him out. So this is how one tries to free oneself of samsara, all the scary things. What all are there? The sharks, various kinds of sharks are there, small sharks, baby sharks, big sharks, bottleneck sharks, all these things. Bottle mouth sharks, all these things. Bottlenose sharks, all these animals, biting animals. And then whales, scary animals. And then other things that, that electric ray, sting ray. The whole animal is like a water current. And how water and current can be together, I don't know. But somehow Bhagavan has arranged this. And it just says hello as it passes by your legs. And only Bhagavan has to save you from electrocution. You get a terrible shock underwater. So, and then of course there are seaweed. They are like parasites. They just entangle you. And then there are all those things. The whole animal is arms. What is that? Octopus. Octopus. They're very intelligent, apparently. And so, they are there. All these things are there. And so the person who is not understanding Brahman tries to eliminate each and everything separately. How to avoid the riptides, how to eliminate the sharks, how to get rid of seaweed. So, but the samsara is a package deal, just like Brahman. And so you can't get rid of each and everything. And if you try to get rid of each and everything, that means you have taken samsara to be satyam. Because all this doesn't need to be gotten rid of. The ocean is but a notion. And this is knowledge. And in this knowledge, you can be surrounded by problems, but it doesn't affect you. Even the ghora and mudha vrittis that you have do no longer affect you. Their buttons are deactivated. Once what happened? Somebody said, I have purchased a new car. Please come and sit and please come and bless the car. I had never blessed a car, so I didn't know how to do it. They said, please sit in the seat of the driver. And so I said, okay, I'll sit in the seat of the driver. And I was just, holding on to the steering wheel, and the car was stationary. And so I was just, playing with all, there were a lot of buttons. So some of them were marked and some of them were just dummy buttons, empty buttons. So then I was just saying, what does this do? What does that do? And then they said to me, this is what, this button makes the coffee. Not really, but anyhow, this button does this button does that. And then, and then I said, what about these empty buttons? Why do they have them here? And they said, no. Swaminiji, this is just, we couldn't afford the top model. This is just a bottom model. The top model, these buttons are they function. They drop a TV screen and they do this, they do that, they retract something, this is there. Then I got the idea. These ghora mudha vrittis have to be like a button in a low model car so that they don't have any effect even if they are turned on. This is what is the falsification, the neutralization of the vrittis. They don't bite. Like the buttons that do not work. The buttons are there, they are Ishwar Srishti, but they are not powered up by your volition, by your ajnanam. This is very nice. And another Shastric example, this is given, is like putting your hand in the mouth of an infant. Small infant, 1 month old, 2 month old. You put your hand in its mouth and out of instinct it will clamp its jaws on your finger. But since it has no teeth, it doesn't hurt you. Similarly, the ghora mudha vrittis are quote unquote removed by making them toothless. By understanding the truth of yourself and by making them non-functional. They may be there, but they don't have any effect on you. This is the blessing of Advaita Vedanta. And so, in this Advaita, this Triputi is gone. Advaita is not an experience. It is the content of the experiencer, experienced, and the means of experience. It is that which is where there is no difference. In fact, you are experiencing Brahman all the time. If you understand it, it is Advaita. If you look for a special Brahman experience, it is Dvaita, duality. And so, Bhumananda. Bhumananda comes from the 7th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad, where the Narada, a celebrated and a very erudite sage, goes to Sanat Kumara for instruction. And Narada goes to Sanat Kumara and says, please teach me this, O sir. Oh, but you know so many things. What do you know? I know this, I know that, I know the Vedas, I know all the adjunct disciplines to the Vedas. Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, all these things, grammar, the know-how of rituals, everything I know. And then I know nakshatra vidya, astrology, astronomy, how to forecast weather, how to do archery, how to do all these things I know. And then he said, Soham Bhagavaha. Soham, you are saying Soham? That he I am, Bhagavan I am. No, no, no. I'm actually saying Hoham. But this fellow I am this local fellow who is Shochami. I am in the grip of sorrow. And I have heard Shokam Tarati Atmavit, that the person of knowledge transcends sorrow, crosses over the ocean of sorrow. I have heard this. How Bhagavat Sadrishaha, from people just like yourself, like your revered self, I have heard that this knowledge makes me cross sorrow. Please, Shokasya Param Tarayatu Bhavan. Please make me cross this dejection, this feeling of rejection once and for all. Help me cross over. And this Sanat Kumara, the teacher, begins the teaching in a very intriguing way. He says, Yad alpam tat martyam. Yad alpam tan martyam. That which is small, because that is what he said, I feel small. That which is small is finite, martyam, subject to death. That is not bhuma, tanna bhuma. Bhuma is a word for Atma. Why didn't he use the word Atma? Because people get bored. People say, what is this? You are talking only of Atma and Brahman. A for Atma, B for Brahman all the time. Don't you have any more things to talk about? So the Upanishad frequently keeps changing the name. Bhuma, Samvit, all these names are there for the same thing, so that one wakes up and listens properly. So Yad Alpam, that which suffers from smallness. What is this smallness? This division. Jnata, Jnanam, Geyam, Bhokta, Bhogam, Bhogyam. Experiencer, experienced, means of experience. All these. This is the cut up joy. When it is centered on objects, you can only sip a little bit because you have cut yourself off as the experiencer. And that object is different from you. It is the source of this joy, supposedly for you. And then there is a means of experience, mind and inference, and the 5 sense organs, etc., etc., eyes, ears, etc., Jnanendriyas. And so that is what is the small, because the Ananda derived from that kind of a truncated, fragmented self is of course small. That is not Bhuma. Bhuma means limitlessly big. And then what is Bhuma? And that which is limitlessly big, what is it? And he gives a very nice definition. Yatra na anyat pashyati, na anyat shrinoti, na anyat vijanati, tat bhuma. So, what is this bhuma? Where the person does not hear anything other than oneself, does not see anything other than oneself, does not experience anything other than oneself, does not know anything other than oneself. So the person is a navel gazer, correct? Solipsistic, self-centered. No, that is not the idea. Meaning, whatever you see is Brahman, is Bhagavan. Whatever you experience is Bhagavan. And you yourself are non-separate from this Bhagavan. And so, whatever you see, first we Ishvarize the universe, and then we say, this Ishvara is you alone. So wherever you go, whatever you see is Bhagavan. And that is the first level of understanding. And then from there, it is just but a step to graduate into understanding everything is an extension of me. For which purpose will I hate anybody? Because that is me. Whoever I dislike is me. Whoever I'm angry at is me. Whoever I love is myself alone. It's all me, 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 me. And so, this is something that has to be understood. This is Bhuma. Na anyat pashyati. Does not see anything other than the truth of oneself. Na anyat pashyati, na anyat shrunoti, does not hear anything other than oneself, does not pick up the smell of anything other than oneself, does not pick up the taste of anything other than oneself. And in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad also, there is a passage where in the Yajnavalkya Janaka dialogue that we alluded to earlier, where Yajnavalkya the sage says to King Janaka, you can only look at something when it is other than you. You can look at something as separate from you if it is other than you. Yatra va anyat iva syat, as though if there is something different, tatra anyah san anyat pashyet. Then if it is different from you, then you can say, I see this. I spy with my little eyes this particular thing in the room. And then anyah san anyat jigret. If one thinks of oneself as separate, then whatever smells one picks up, like some nice aroma of coffee or whatever one likes, then whatever one picks up, that is also separate from oneself. Anyah san anyad rasayet. So if one is separate, then one would taste something separately. Anyah anyad vadet. Then one would say something to another person and discredit them, scold them, say something hurtful because one thinks that the other person is other than myself. Anyah anyat shrunuyat. One will hear something different. Anyah anyat manvita. One comes to conclusions about someone. Anyah anyat sprishet. One touches something and says, this is separate from myself. Anyah anyat vijaniyat. One knows something as other than oneself. When? Only and only if there is something outside of you, O king, you can see that. If there is something outside of you, you can experience that, taste that, hear that, know that, speak to that, etc. But what is the reality? Salile eko drashta advaito bhavati. But everything that you experience is like the reflection of yourself in the water. So you are standing in front of a pond or something and you go like this. The reflection also imitates you. Everything is but an imitation of you. So this is what is Advaito Bhavati. This is Advaita. When you understand that the wave of knower, the wave of known, and the wave of means of knowledge is but upheld by the ocean in which all bubbles of objects, longings have resolved. Salile eko drishta. In this vast expanse of consciousness, the seer alone is there without a second. And so what about the experiencer? Experiencer status is not there. The person exists without any particular object that is experienced. So then, who would one speak to, about what, and to whom? What is there to be seen other than you? Eshaha Brahmalokaha, he concludes, this indeed is Brahman. Brahmaloka is not some separate place you go to, okay? This indeed is Brahman, there is nothing else. So, an experience without owning it up as mine, because everything is you. Experiencer you, experienced you. And so this is where, this is what is called Bhuma. Bhuma means Ananda. And so Bhumananda means Ananda, Ananda, Ananda without an experiencer. Without an experiencer which is attached to that particular experience. It's like the seer. If you say seer, seer is a relational word. When there is something to see, you are the seer. So when there is something to experience, you are the experiencer. But this experience is Nitya Upalabdhi Swarupa, as we have seen in, what is that text? Hasta Malakiya. Nitya Upalabdhi Swarupa. It's an ever present never-ending experience. Ever-present experience, never-ending experience. So if it is ever-present and never-ending, can it be called an experience? Probably not. Probably not, because it is always there. An experience has a beginning date and an end date. But therefore, our language suffers from certain limitations. So we may say experience within quotes, but is it really an experience when there is nothing in particular that is being experienced other than the nature of the experiencer alone? In every experience, the nature of the one that is experiencing shines. And if this is understood, then the upadhi bheda, whether it is a gross upadhi of all the objects that one is interacting, or a subtle upadhi in the form of the mind and its various vrittis, both of them are neutralized, both of them are falsified. And then next one. That is why it is called limitless joy. Okay. So the next one. Brahmanandabhide granthe panchamodhyaya iritah. Brahmanandabhide granthe panchamodhyaya iritah. Vishayananda etena dvarenantah pravishyatam. Vishayananda etena dvarenantah pravishyatam. Here, Swami Vidyaranyaji is putting a welcome mat for everyone to walk through. Welcome. And so what does this welcome mat look like? So he says, he's concluding, so he says, Brahmananda Abhidhe, this section, Grantha here is not the entire manuscript, it is this particular section, this quintad, the last quintad of chapters. So the Panchadasi, has 3 groups, as we have talked about this in the beginning. So the first group of 5 pentads, 5 chapters, Viveka, all of them have at the end. And then the second group, Deepa, Tripti Deepa, Kutastha Deepa, Nataka Deepa, Dhyana Deepa, like that. And then the last one is called Ananda. Yogananda, Vishayananda, Brahmananda, all these things are talked about. So in this last quintad, in this Panchamodhyaya, the last chapter, the 5th chapter of the last quintad, what is that? In this, Iritaha, it was unfolded. What was unfolded? The Vishayananda was unfolded. The joy of, that is connected to, derived from objects. And what does the joy of objects have a place in a Vedanta text which deals with subjects? And he says, this is where I put a welcome mat. Etena, with the help of this chapter, Dvarena, Etena Dvarena, with the help of this chapter, which is indeed a doorway, where I have put a welcome mat, welcome to the truth of yourself. This is what the mat says, Pravishyatam. Please, everyone may enter. This is the sage's compassion. Oh, you don't even know the basic things. How can you study Brahman? People who are like Vidyaranya Swamiji, even our Pujya Swamiji, they make Vedanta accessible to all. That's why people would throng to Pujya Swamiji, because it was just a delight to be there. He would not condescend to the people. He always would say, we should respect the audience, no matter who has come, no matter what has brought them to the doorstep of Vedanta. We welcome them in and we respect who they are. And so what if they cannot understand? If they cannot understand, it is because I need to find out how to communicate properly. And I need to give them the aid, the tools and the aids that are given by that are handed by the Shastra. One has to do that. This is what every teacher thinks. And so this is, and we have seen, I have seen many times. Once the electrician in Rishikesh suddenly came. He was so busy, he didn't have time for Vedanta, had a lot of respect for Pujya Swamiji. Once during the class, something was not working, either the microphone or something. Some switch was not working. He came to repair that, and he heard a little bit of the class. Then after that, when Pujya Swamiji was in the satsang room having his tea, and we were all there, he came and said, I heard you say a little bit. I don't know English. And can you please explain what you meant? And it was just so beautiful to watch Swamiji take the time to explain to him. And he didn't know English. And Pujya Swamiji's, Hindi was at best iffy. He himself would say that. He would say, कभी कभी हिंदी आती है, कभी कभी हिंदी आता है. So he himself would acknowledge that. So in broken Hindi, he explained to him so beautifully, using the metaphor of electricity and a light bulb. He explained to him the whole upadhi bheda, that electricity is everywhere, but this has come through the fan in a different way and through the light in a different way. He explained very beautifully. And in fact, it was a learning for all of us. It was a learning about Vedanta, and it was also a learning of how to teach everybody. So here, Swami Vidyaranya does not, in the whole Grantha, does not dismiss the person with what he calls Mudha Vritti, Ghora Vritti. The person who is unfortunately subject to the spell of Rajas and Tamas, which are like Rahu and Ketu, eclipsing the mind and the buddhi and not allowing it to soak up the glory of oneself, even though one may be blessed with the best of teachers. He doesn't dismiss them. He says, let us craft a new way of entering into this understanding of Brahman. And what is this new way? Through the joy of objects. Object joy is universally understood. Everybody, every person, even the one in the greatest depth of depression, has some things that make that person happy. Even the person in the spell of bad mood, anger, also has some things that will bring a smile to their faces. So let us take that and let us take it apart. Like a toddler who takes apart a toy car and then, and says, oh, so many parts. But unlike a toddler, Swami Vidyaranya has effectively put this back. So when you take apart the joy of objects, so to speak, only Sat, Chit, Ananda, they are the so-called partless parts. They are made into parts deliberately so that we can analyze each of them for teaching purposes. They are as though divided. And then we saw in the last two verses how skillfully he put it together and said they are actually one. In fact, they are you. There is no Sat separate from you, no Chit separate from you, no Ananda separate from you. And so then he has put it back very artfully and skillfully. And he says that let the last chapter of the Panchadasi be a welcoming mat, a welcome mat that is spread out to invite everyone. The last chapter of a book is very important. That's why Vedanta is the last chapter of the Veda. And see what it does to the person. First, the Veda deals with a desiring person and tries to fulfill all the desires through various yajnas, homas, rituals, pujas, etc., prayers. One is put on a diet of prayer to grow out of the desire. And when one is ready, then the last chapter removes the notion that one is a lacking, wanting, desiring person. It knocks off the pramata. This is what the whole thing is. You can't say, I know Vedanta as an object, because Vedanta is you. That is what there is no knower here. Just like in this joy that is being talked about, there is no experiencer that stands apart from the experience. Everything is you. And so this is the, the last chapter of the book is therefore very important. And if one is a good writer, one will always save something for the end. And it's not always in mystery novels like Agatha Christie, and who done it is at the end. It's not like that. Here, it's right from the beginning. You know who is the culprit, you. And what do you have to know? Myself. Everything is you alone. But here, the last chapter reveals a beautiful truth, where in the beginning, the artificial, kritrimam, artificial distance or the distinction made between I, the subject, and the object. This is, as I said, Vedanta baby talk. Gu gu ga ga, Atma anatma no. Dvauhi padarthau. There are two things. You are Atma and everything else is Anatma. This is Vedanta 101. But then if the subject-object distinction is kept alive, then there is Advaita Hani. There is loss of Advaita. We cannot have that. And so what do? We say that which is the object is non-separate from the subject. And he has done it so beautifully by luring all of us on to this intriguing topic of the joy of objects. And then he has taken us back to ourself, which is the subject. This resolution is very artistically done, very creative, and it shows both his mastery over himself, his subject matter, which is one and the same, and it shows also his deep compassion and his deep passion, desire to make this Vedanta, this joy available for all. And then what does he say? He says, please enter. Then the last verse has a mangala suchaka, meaning it is for it ends in a prayer, because it is not only the end of the chapter, but it's the end of the entire book itself. Let us read. Priyadharir haro nena brahmanandena sarvada. Priyadharir haro nena brahmanandena sarvada. Payacharirenas sarvan swashritan chuddamanasan. Payacharirenas sarvan swashritan chuddamanasan. Priyat. Priyat, may the Lord, Priyat, may the Lord be pleased. Priyat, may be pleased. Who may be pleased? Harihi. Harihi, may the Lord, who is known as Hari, be pleased. Who is Hari? Harati papan iti Harihi. The one who removes all papas, the one who takes away everything that doesn't belong, all obstacles to the knowledge, all difficulties, all uncomfortable situations are gone after invoking and surrendering to whom? That is called Hari. Then another name of the Lord is also the same, Haraha. Harati. Anartha vratan Harati. The one who removes all the things, a host of difficulties that do not belong. So this Lord who is both Hari and Hara, meaning the one who is very good at gagging and kidnapping, what? And taking away, abducting Mudha and Ghora vrittis in this chapter itself. And so we want these vrittis to be abducted, taken away. We don't want them to be disturbed. And so for a student of Vedanta, this is a very important manifestation of Bhagavan. And so, Priyad, may this Hari, who is also Hara, be pleased. With what? Anena Brahmanandena, with this joy of Brahman chapter. And may Bhagavan be in the form of Hari and Hara, be happy, be ever pleased. When? Sarvada, all the time. And then Payat. Payat means may he protect. Patu, Mam, we say. And then, so Payat, may he protect who? Sharirinaha, those that are endowed with bodies. Shariraha, Shariram asya asti. So the one who is endowed with a body is called Sharirin. And if you don't know Sanskrit, the English derivation of this word is one who is inside a Sharira, in Sharira, Sharir in, like Vedant in. Okay, so you can help yourself like that. So Payat Sharirinaha. So may he protect all creatures, all beings that have this upadhi called the body. And who are these creatures? Swashritan, the ones who have taken refuge in the Lord. Such people who have taken refuge in the Lord, please protect, may the Lord protect them. And who are these people who take refuge in the Lord? Shuddha Manasan, the ones whose minds have been purified through a life of karma yoga, through a life of prayer, through a life of service. The ones who are surrendered to Bhagavan, the ones who have understood that all this is Bhagavan alone, and the ones who are bhaktas basically, and the ones who are committed to shining the Shanta vritti and abiding in the Sattvika vritti. Such people, may the Lord's blessings and protection be with all those people, everybody. So everybody who is struggling, who is striving, may they be pleased, may they be protected. And protected means what? Protected from disaster. This is what we know in every prayer, protected from disaster. But here we are not talking of disasters. Here the greatest disaster is oneself alone. Yeah, we are not talking of calamities that can be included, no doubt. Natural calamities and difficulties, interpersonal difficulties. Who doesn't want protection? Okay, fine. But really, one has to be protected from the worst instincts of oneself in the form of these rajasic and tamasic vrittis. So that protection also is included. And this prayer is very successful because we are still studying Panchadasi and one is still benefiting. And so to his prayer, I add my prayer also. May Pujya Swamiji's blessings abide in everyone's life, and may all difficulties for the study of Vedanta be just gone. May it all disappear, and may all obstacles be removed even before they have a chance to form. And with these words we conclude this class and the retreat, and I take the time to thank Shuddhatmaji and Chitra and Sahadev, who could not be here today for the last class. He said he regretted to miss it. He had some other work. And so we thank all of them for this, for giving us the space. And then I will give it over to Shuddhatmaji. I hope he's here. Is he here? Yeah?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Welcome. Om Om.